Okay, perfect.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. I think everybody knows me, but I am Stephanie Ruskin, the head of school. And we're very excited to offer our first parent workshop of the 23-24 school year, even that it got a little delayed to the hurricane, but we're happy to have Miss Michelle Tovar here, a former parent, Montessorian, our special guest today. I'll let her officially introduce herself, but we want to thank you guys for coming. And I'm here as well to listen as well as a parent of almost 13-year-old twins. I think we can all use a little bit more of this topic. So thank you again, Michelle, for having us all tonight.
Thank you, Stephanie. Definitely. And yes, thank you so much for your flexibility. With the hurricane week, we also had COVID come through our house, so it wasn't meant to be. But I'm glad that we're all here together tonight to enjoy this presentation together. So it's titled "Yet Less Yelling and More Connecting," and I'm going to be sharing 5 powerful shifts which I'm sure none of us escape. Those feelings of just feeling overwhelmed, or maybe like you're living in this controlled chaos. So, my goal is to just offer you some solutions to just help you get more peace of mind and just some clarity on how to navigate with your children. So I always like to start off with um, a little grounding exercise. I think, we're always have a million things going on. And so I think it's just great to just um, be in the moment as much as possible. So go ahead and get comfortable. Allow your eyes to close if you feel called to, or you just soften up your gaze. And just begin by taking some long, deep breaths, breathing in fully and exhaling fully, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, allowing your breath to just find its natural rhythm. And notice how each breath inward is different from your breath outward. And if your mind starts to wander with the thoughts, the plans, the things, little people running around, just acknowledge it. Breathe in for like 10 more seconds. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. The breath is really great to just refocus, re energize, and bring you back to the moment. And we'll get started. So, again, this workshop is for you if you have that deep desire to parent more peacefully. You want to have great kids, you want to be close to them and have a great relationship, but you just want more cooperation. You want less conflict in your home and less separation. And you want all of this without resorting in the old dominant power over style of parenting of yelling and punishments or maybe even bribes. And maybe you were raised that way. A lot of us were. Maybe your parents yelled at you a lot, or you were punished, or you even experienced corporal punishment. But you probably made a promise to want to do things a little differently. I know I did. But the reality is there really isn't just a plan in place to or a model to kind of follow. That was my case for. I just want to make sure everyone can see my screen. Yeah, okay, perfect. That was the case for my client Crystal. She really wanted to do things differently. And she was doing her best, but often she found herself just repeating these patterns that she didn't want to. And so we really worked hard on replacing unproductive tools with some new ones. And she really saw a difference for her family. But you might be thinking, there's no way I can have harmony in my home if I don't threaten to take my child's iPad away or ground my teenager if they broke a rule. And all of that's okay. I'm not here to try to convince you what's the right choice for your family. You get to totally do that. But I do, however, want to share some knowledge and insights and experiences that can really open your mind to new possibilities and just get some more clarity on how you can best meet your child's needs. And so these steps, just to be clear, peaceful parenting, conscious parenting is still parenting. It's not permissive parenting. We're not going to just let our kids run wild and free, but rather we're going to create a relational parenting style where emotional intelligence, conscious communication, and cooperation really replace that need of power over dynamics. Now, I don't have a magic pill for you. I wish I did. Would make a lot of money. Just kidding. Humans are going to be humans, right? We're still going to lose our temper at times. I know I have my moments, my husband has his moments, and my kids definitely have their moments and their bad days. So this is a process, right? And it's beautiful, magical process because you get to decide what you want for your family. And all of this takes time. It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes willingness to mess up, have that beginner's mindset, and just try new things. And perfection is never the goal. Connection is, really teaching our children that when they make a mistake, they can fix it. That, they're going to be valued regardless of what's happening, that their voice has a place in the family no matter what. And so these tools and insights, some of you are going to take it tonight and run with it, and some of you might need some support. So I promise at the end of this, I'll definitely talk about how we could have a conversation together. So does this sound like you? Even though you promise yourself over and over that you're not going to yell at your kids, you often reach a breaking point, and all of those promises go out the window. I know for me personally, it's usually when we're trying to go somewhere and we're all just on a different page. Maybe you have, it's the bickering, it's the sibling rivalry that constantly drives you crazy and you'll do anything to stop. Maybe you have a little one that just keeps breaking the same rules over and over, even though they promise, more time than you can remember. Or maybe you're a new parent and you're just wanting some support and guidance as you start this parenting journey. And so if you're like 99% of all parents this day and age, screen times are a constant battle, and you might be feeling like you're losing it, or that your children develop this listening filter, and you feel like you don't have a voice. So please, if you don't mind, comment in the chat. What is the thing? What is the thing that brings you to that breaking point? I think for me, the reason why running late and getting on time is triggering for me when my kids are on different pages is because I've always struggled with time management. And so when I see my children struggling, I'm like, oh my God, I passed that problem on to them. And it just kind of sets me off. So if you don't mind, totally, judge-free zone here. What's the thing that sets you off, that kind of spins you in that reactivity? Do you want to read them out, Stephanie?
I guess it would help if I was unmuted. Sibling rivalry. When you do not want to listen, and when they do not want to listen and they keep shouting. Those are the only two that we got. But mine personally is with my two never really fought before, but now they're in this teen bickering stage. So that's my breaking point right now. Another one is the high energy and running around in places when we need to sit, like church and eating out.
Yeah. Those are all real, right? They're really true and real. And oh, we have more.
Yep, not following directions. When he doesn't want to put on clothes in the morning and just wants to play.
Yeah, children are so wired for play. Sometimes it's like separating what needs to happen next, and what our priorities are can be totally different from what theirs are. So all of these are great and real and just true. Thank you so much for
And you're not alone, because just because someone else didn't write it, it doesn't mean they're not shaking their head going, yes, I'm having the same problem.
Absolutely. And to kind of add what you said, Stephanie, sometimes they come at different phases, and as they're developing, and we're going to talk about the developmental stages, but new things kind of surface, and that's the what really makes parenting so dynamic, is that they're just constantly changing pieces.
We got one more. Sorry. Behavior changes around different people. My child is so well behaved with me, but that's not the case for grandma, example.
Sure. And so might be feeling a little bit judged um, by other family members. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And please, if anybody has any questions as we're going, do not hesitate in asking. So the truth is, like, none of us really, or very few of us, have, a model for how to parent in this modern time. And, maybe you were lucky to have had a loving connection at home when you were parented, but the challenges nowadays are very different. Kids are more disconnected from each other and from parents more than ever in human culture. So we really have challenges that our parents simply did not have. And so, I'm going to show you these shifts that will allow you to meet your child at this moment and see these immediate changes in the relationship that you have with your child and your family. And if you have a teen too. And my goal is that you leave, with more ease, more peace of mind, and just feeling more confident to know that you can absolutely feel more joy in parenting. You will have kids that make you proud, have a deep sense of family values, and you're able to communicate your needs and feelings. I really feel that when children are given the space and permission to speak their needs and feelings into the family, and their voice matters, they learn really how to advocate for themselves and speak up against adversity. And really, these become the leaders for tomorrow. And I believe that children with these capacities of emotional intelligence and effective communication can really change our future. So the other side is that you'll be able to discover how to the ability to communicate effectively with your children, because your feelings and your needs also matter. And so we're working towards a collaborative family system where everyone's needs in the family matter. There's not a hierarchy, that the child's needs are more important than the adults or vice versa. And I'm really talking about the emotional landscape. And really, just to create this space that, number one, doesn't cause harm with communication, and it's done without attachment. So we're just not making our children responsible for our emotional experience. And so I'm going to walk you through those 5 shifts in just a moment, but I just want to share a little bit about me. So these are my family members, and I am married to a great husband, almost 22 years in November, and we have 3 sons. My oldest, will be 17 tomorrow. I can't believe it. 14 and 9, and these are really just some candid shots of us having fun together. I can't always get my teenagers to pose for me these days. But, when we're just hanging out, debating sports, just lounging together, those are true moments. It's not what my house looks like every single day. My kids have disagreements. I can yell at my kids at times, right? Or get annoyed with them when we're running late. And all of those are part of our day, but these are also possible. Now, early in my parenting journey, I didn't think this was possible. I was always tired. I was stressed. I wanted everything around me to change so that I could do better. And what I realized is that I really had to be the one to change to be a better mom. And so, if this resonates with you, if you feel like, oh, you have a lot of things working against you, or it just seems way too hard, I just want to share that with my through my experience, I learned that you get to have a huge impact when you start to take ownership and responsibility for the things, and things will naturally just start to shift towards an even bigger, long-lasting impact. So I came to this work after teaching Montessori for 20 something years. And I thought it was such a wake up call when I started my parent certification program. I really thought it was a business decision because I had so much experience working with children ages 2 to 12. But I really didn't know what I was missing and what would make a difference. And so that's what I'm here to share with you today. And so, as a longtime Montessori teacher turned parent coach, I now help overwhelmed parents thrive through their child's planes of development. So, Dr. Maria Montessori observed 4 planes of development based on human development. She broke them into 4 groups uh, based on their age. So the first plane is the infancy, so it's 0 through 6. And a lot of times you'll see them grouped in the 3-year cycle. So the absorbent mind is really what she named it. So this is where, children are really coming into independence and helping me think or help me do it myself. They're just emerging and absorbing this world that they're discovering. The second plane is childhood, so that's ages 6 to 12, and that's the reasoning mind. She also referred to it as the age of rudeness. So they're finding their voice. Help me do it help me think is kind of the what's going on at this phase, and then the third plane is adolescence, where they're kind of coming into this, socialization is really taking flight here. Their peers' opinion matter a lot more than what your parents' opinion matters. So they're just kind of seeing their role in that socialization. And then the maturity is where they're just coming in and where their role is in society and how they can serve and give back. And how can I help you? So in each of these planes, the child's not only physically going through some differences, but psychologically, um, their characteristics are changing, and also they have different developmental needs. And so, really deeply helping parents understand what plane of development their child is super helpful because they're able to understand their child's experience and their perspective and be able to meet them where they're at. Okay, so let's dive in. And what you're going to notice is that a lot of what we're going to talk about today has a lot more to do with you, the adult, than it does with your child. So I just want to kind of give that disclaimer here. These are the shifts that you, as the adult, are making. And what I promise it will happen is that when you shift, your child will shift, because children are our mirrors. And so when we really embrace these practices within ourselves, we're actually modeling them for our children. and those problems or those conflicts kind of begin to dissolve. So, shift number one is all emotions are valid and can be communicated peacefully. So your emotions, your child's emotions are valid, and they can be communicated peacefully. So there's no good or bad emotion. A lot of times in Western culture, especially, we're taught to stuff our bad emotions from a very young age. Often you'll will distract our kids when they're having a meltdown or a hard time, and you'll see that sometimes at like a restaurant, and when a little one's having a hard time, no judgment, but a cell phone or an iPad, something is kind of shoved in their direction just to distract them from their feelings. And so, when we're little and we're told to toughen up, or we're told to not cry or be angry, or that anger is bad, especially for little boys, we feel this shame around specific emotions. And so today, with more knowledge, we know that childhood is so incredibly impactful. And so teaching our children to be with all of their emotions is a vital experience. It's vital to helping them experience all the beauty of life. And so, and to communicate that effectively. So when we're taught that our feelings are bad, what happens? We hold them in, and a lot of parents that I coach are really just working through breaking a habitual lifelong pattern of holding in that anger, that resentment, that fear. Because what happens is, when we're holding it in, we become like a steam, like a tea kettle. And the steam, just starts building and building, and eventually the emotions blow and become more powerful than our willpower. And so, it's understandable that it's going to spill out eventually. It's just how humans work. It doesn't mean you don't love your kids, right? It doesn't mean that you're bad. It's just we're people. But the truth is that our children are what pays the price. So they will either learn to shut down themselves, will definitely learn to people please, or to keep in line, or just kind of not rock the boat. And if we really think about that deeply, that's not really the lesson we want to be teaching our children when they grow into adulthood eventually. And so it's no matter why a lot of children really struggle with, stress and an emotional dysregulation and distrust. But the great news is that we get to discover how to change when we discover how to change ourselves first and treat ourselves with self empathy, forgive ourselves, when we make mistakes, we're human, and just really, allow the experience for our children to want to learn from you. And so, according to the most recent research of neuroscience and psychosomatics, humans make 80% of our decisions based on emotion. So, we've been taught in this culture to really value the head over the body and the heart. But we know that our emotional centers are the first to form in the growing brain of a child. So without emotional intelligence practices like empathy, active listening, attunement, non-judgmental, holding space, really the growth and execution of the logical mind will actually be stunted. So emotional intelligence is really the foundation of intellectual intelligence. And to feel, really fulfill that connection and clarity and confidence, we really must parent from the heart and body, and actually quiet our heads, our spinning thoughts, our fears. And that's really what I teach parents to do. I want to share this tool. this is a great tool for the sibling rivals. A lot of the things that were mentioned earlier. It's called the PACE process, and it looks really simple, like on the surface. But it's really just a culmination of a lot of the work that I do. So P stands for presence. It's just really just being where you are right now, out of your head and in your body. And often, I kind of what we did in the beginning of this, I teach my clients to access presence with their breath and just really feeling themselves in their feet, or holding their hands tightly, or just using a mantra. It just really keeps us from spinning out of reactivity and just really being available for what's true in the moment. E stands for empathy. So, empathy is the ability to separate the feelings of another person while still being present to them. So, empathy is super powerful because, forgiveness of self and others, and just having that understanding that we own our own emotional context, and then we can open ourselves to the emotional context of another person. Um, and so empathy just really, it just comes from holding that space and not rushing into judgment or trying to fix things or stop things. It's really just understanding what's happening in the interior and the exterior of another person, in this case, your child. So once we have presence and empathy, we can acknowledge what's true for us and what's true for someone else, leading into effective communication. And so I I teach through Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication framework. It's an amazing structure, and he defines the V in violence as causing harm to, a person spiritually, emotionally, or physically. And so, we're all human, and we're gonna have our moments where we lose our cool. If you're anything like if your kids are anything like my youngest, he just ends up falling into tears. So again, this isn't about perfection. This is just a tool. It's something we can reach for. And then finally, E is where the magic happens. That's really where families can start exploring solutions together. So rather than the power over do as I say, not as I do kind of parenting, we're actually going to collaborate with our kids, because when your kids are involved in creating a solution, they're going to be more invested. And so when kids have that voice and they're able to brainstorm ideas, they're really just going to access that more. So again, this is something that, if you want to talk more about, we can definitely talk more later. But ultimately, we have to embody these practices first. So, our kids aren't going to learn it if we don't model it for them. Like I always, my oldest son, that's about to be 17 tomorrow, he's almost 6'2". Like still this little boy in this big body. But we all know people, right, that are like 2-year-olds in like a 40-year-old body, right? They're just, they just are struggle with kind of communication and reactivity and just navigating through the emotions. So understanding that there's a rainbow of emotions, not just the common ones, is super important, and just building that emotional literacy of being able to feel the nuances of these different feelings, and allowing these emotions to just be accepted in our children, so that we can help them understand, the difference between amused and remorseful, and really just having that understanding that we can connect deeply with our children and their emotions. So when we learn the skill of communicating emotions, we become more emotionally intelligent and emotionally responsible models for our children to do the same. And so really the home is the first it's your child's first community where they're going to learn how to be in connection with other people. And our goal as parents is to raise future leaders that stand, up for injustices and that are responsible and accept others for who they are. And we get to show our children how a healthy, imperfect family community feels. So, shift number two is embracing the truth that all needs in the family and the members of the family are equally important. So, my youngest son, Christian, he loves to sleep with like the blanket over his head, like all these stuffed animals and pillows, and just tucked around his body. And even though I worry that he's getting too hot or he doesn't have a little breathing hole, I know that there's a need, right? A need for him to feel safe in the dark, to feel comforted as he falls asleep. And that's just as real as my need to get out the door on time. And so really this is the shift that it's equally important for our children to have their needs met as it is for the adult. And so a lot of times we understand this intellectually, but we're in the day to day, the traditional model is, you should obey, you should fall in line. And that really can have an impact on your child's self-esteem, and children just feeling like they need to be people pleasers or that their needs don't matter. And so, really, I'm here to advocate a family system model that regards the whole humanity of each person in the family as equal and deserving of care, and and just really experiencing that communication and connection, that there are tools to problem solve, and that there is the possibility of everyone's needs being met. And children are intense, they're complex, and they have so many needs, needs for safety and significance, for validation, to be heard, to have a voice, to express their creativity, just like adults do. All families also have conscious and unconscious dynamics at play. We have generational patterns of trauma, abuse, ways that we were communicated that have been, brought to us 6 or 7 generations ago. And so the work is really to name the conscious and unconscious dynamics at play in your family so that your children can learn that it's safe for them to do the same. And so, as conscious, peaceful parenting, our parents, we're really just doing the work here at seeing our children through a new lens. And, we're rather than like the competition or the scarcity, we can choose to create this community within our home that there's no need for our children to fight over validation or significance or being heard, and just creating, a non-hierarchy relationship, that there's plenty of all of those things to go around in the family. So shift number three is embracing conscious communication. So understanding that this is a skill of knowing how to share what your needs are, what your feelings are, and what your emotions are without shaming, blaming, anger, guilt. We've all had relationships where people say, well, if you didn't do the thing, I wouldn't have been upset, or you made me lose my temper, or you made me sad. And so this is really just the communication of codependency and enmeshment. And so when you make this shift to really own your own emotional experience, own what your needs are, and discover them without blaming someone else, um, or having guilt. And really the root of accepting your child wholly and completely is self-awareness. and self-acceptance. So it's really your own responsibility, just standing in your experiences. It's what's going to teach your children to do the same. And a lot of us are stuck in the cycle of blaming, you know, um, of being angry or triggered easily. And so it's because we haven't allowed ourselves to process the way we were communicated as a child. And so a lot of the work I do in the beginning of my program is helping adults really unpack their feelings from their past, and whether it was abandonment or guilt or trauma or removal of affection, and so that they're not unconsciously bringing those patterns with their own children. We really have to heal first as adults so that we don't unconsciously repeat that wounding. And really, as a society, we're just now waking up to this. Remember, as I mentioned, violence by definition is not just corporal punishment, it's the action that causes spiritual, emotional, or physical harm on another human being. And when we're able to be conscious and communicate effectively, we're really speaking from our heart, and we learn how to really feel our feelings and name our needs, and we use the framework to do that free of aggression and blaming and shaming. And this is really just a game changer for so many families. Shift number 4 is connection and play. This is where it gets really fun. So we can start to really get out of the weight of unpacking our childhood wounds because we get to play. And even if you have a teenager, kids are wired for play, for fun. And so connection and play really deepen the relationship with our children. And it's the lifeblood. Without intimate, deep connection between a parent and child, trust is really going to have a hard time flourishing. And so we're just looking for more intimacy. There's nothing better than love and tenderness between a parent and child, and just strengthening that relationship. And the best nutrients for fertile connection is laughter, it's play, it's spontaneity, it's just letting it go. It's running around the house, making a game, putting your work down, just spending time together. And a lot of times parents, really want to do this, right? They understand the importance of this, but in the day to day, there's so many competing priorities. But the neuroscience behind play really, makes me stress the parents to make it a priority. The to-do list can wait. The work will get done. It always does. And the phones, right? Like what's happening with our screens and social media, like is not as important as the connection we're building with our children. So really, as parents, we need to develop better parenting discipline to put those distractions aside and just call our kids forward away from their distractions. And the best way to win the screen time battle is to be more fun than the screen. And so really, a lot of us have buried our inner child, and just really learning that we had to hide our authentic, childlike nature. And so what if tomorrow, you decide to do something crazy and in an appropriate way, and like maybe, it was no utensils for dinner, or you made a mess with whipped cream, or you announced a family picnic with your kids. So how can you as parents cultivate a sense of trust and faith, and remembering how fun it is to, tell a story about when you were a child to your children, or act out a play, or run through the water. And so my work really as a coach is to support, you in any shifts that might be keeping you away from a playful parenting approach. We're not going to schedule fun or, make it a task. It's just kind of softening the edges and making it more of a priority. And you'll end up having more fun too. Now, shift number 5, our final shift, is sometimes the one that raises the most eyebrows. But I think once, you kind of put in place the first 4 shifts that we talked about, embracing connection is really just it's more powerful than punishments and bribes. So the shift from timeouts, taking things away, if you don't do this, then, I'm going to do that, like creating those conflicts, manipulative practices, that shift to more connection, more communication is really what I'm referring to. So it's important, though, to understand the difference between boundaries and limits and expectations, you know, uh, um, versus control and punishment. So all the families I work with have family values, and these are the things that are accepted in the family as acceptable behavior. There's, for example, like, you're not going to just allow a sibling to punch another sibling, right? Like, we're not going to just say, oh, why did you do that? We're just going to express the boundary that it's from a frame of seeing that child, the child that hid, as still worthy and deserving of love and affection and attention. So punishment really controls and teaches little people to be scared of big people. And it teaches our children really that their needs don't matter, that they just need to fall in line. And, both of these practices, whether you're using peaceful practices or power over, they're going to have an outcome where the child learns how to behave, but they're really at different costs. So when we exert that control over, you're really setting yourself up for a power struggle. It's us versus them, it's a winner versus a loser. And it just cuts off the connection and communication and undermines the child's self-worth and confidence. So this is where, we learn sometimes later on that I'm only loved and accepted when I fall in line. And often, when your kids are having these moments, it's these strong moments, it's when you know they're needing that love and affection the most, but yet there's a massive breach and of trust. And so when they're acting out is really when they need that love most, and they're just being met with shame or control or punishment. So would you rather a child that complies because they're forced to, because one day that force could be coming from a bully, from an unethical boss, or maybe a partner that doesn't say no? Or would you rather have, that they have a clear sense of personal confidence, that they know where they end and another person starts, and that they know what their values are clearly as taught by you, and they have this sense of emotional intelligence, that my needs as a human matter and other people's needs also matter. And I can speak to what is true without the fear of losing that love and affection. So peaceful parenting is not permissive. It's actually quite the opposite. It's very engaged, collaborative, active parenting. And it's really, the opportunity for you to choose for yourself and your family and create a more collaborative environment that with values and boundaries and commitment that matter most to you. And then really just powering all that up with communication skills. And again, that nonviolent communication that I mentioned. And children just really learn way more when we speak to them than when we yell at them. They feel so much better honoring the family boundaries and the limits that we set for them together, and just, just learn how to communicate towards a peaceful solution. Um, I know for me, this shift happened for my family when we learned better communication tools. We're very loud, we're very expressive, competitive family. And, when we started implementing better tools without labels, without judgment, just more love and understanding, it really made a difference for my family. We'll often sit down together and discuss, you know, what we agree on, what we disagree on, or specific things, and how to move forward together more peacefully. My client Evelyn also learned that really getting more in tune with her own emotions and understanding her child's needs and emotion resulted in more cooperation in her home as well. So really doing things differently, that it can be scary. It's breaking away from the status quo. It takes courage, it takes patience, it takes willing to like really own your own experience, and really just creating this new paradigm of parenting within your family is really what's going to change the world, quite frankly. And I shared a lot of information with you, and we have information everywhere, right? Social media, Google. We live in an information world, but it's really the actual, like the implementation and applying it into your family. Discovering the peace process and really how it works, creating your own family values, unpacking your parenting past so that you don't bring that unconsciously into your own parenting. That's really what creates the change. And so, if you're ready to kind of break some patterns, if you're feeling stuck and you're looking, for these changes, I'd love to extend an invitation to support you in any way I can. And real change, getting better at something, it requires coaching. And that's really because coaching brings two things. It brings an outside perspective that you might not be thinking about, and it brings accountability to ensure that you're following through with your intentions and your commitment until they actually become a habit. And so, really, just breaking through these patterns, and working to support your family is what I do, and just creating that safe space to just talk about what's working and what's not working. And just discovering a relationship, that you can create with your children that's long lasting without resulting in like those default patterns of yelling and threatening and punishing, etc. So, if you would like to speak to me and discuss more, I'd love to see how I could support you and your family. Just visit my website and book a complimentary call. I'll also put it in the chat so that you can just click it there. And again, these are the 5 shifts. If you want to take a screenshot, and I'm going to stop sharing because I'd love to hear any big takeaways, any questions, any concerns you might have for the next few minutes here. Stop sharing.
I'm just going to quickly touch on exactly what you had said and go back to what is our Montessori training. It always talks about when a child is having difficulty, there's 3 things. It's called the Montessori triad. We look at the adult first, then we look at the environment, and then we look at the child. So I think it goes right back to confirm what Michelle had just talked about, that we've got to work on ourselves first as an adult. Sorry, my dog's snoring. And then the environment second, which we'll be doing a Montessori in the Home workshop in October about Montessori at home, which will help your whole life go more peacefully. And then third is the child in the environment. So I just really love how Michelle talked about, it was, really making those 5 shifts with us first and then moving on there. And in our Montessori training, the teachers are actually taught how to do several things that Michelle talked about, where taking a deep breath, we have to prepare ourselves before going into the environment, whether it's 5 minutes in the car before going into the school, whether it's an extra 10 minutes. And sometimes as adults and parents, I need to do that. We all need to do that. Sometimes we just need to breathe before we look at how we're going to approach our children or that situation. So it really just all does kind of come all full circle. So thank you for coming, and I hope everybody has some questions and some ideas. And
yes, please share any big takeaways, anything that really stood out for you, or any questions you might have. You can either unmute or put it in the chat.
I have a question.
yes.
Okay. Well, no. Well,
You can turn on your camera. We like to see people. Don't be shy.
Hold on. Is it working?
Yeah.
Yes, I see you.
Well, excuse this mess. Anyway, yeah, I have a question. So I have Luna is 3, and then I have an 18-month-old. So to me, it's just like, I feel like there's so much information out there all the time. So I've been doing the peaceful parenting, and it is really beneficial to both Mia and Luna. And I'm really learning a lot. So, but it's just, to me, it's so hard because it feels like sometimes you're being not too nice, not at all, but it's like sometimes you're not setting, like, where does the limit go? Like, sometimes I feel like I'm not setting boundaries or anything, or discipline, because it's so much gentle, but I also lose lose it sometimes, because she wants everything her little sister has, and the little sister keeps, I feel, not getting any of the same attention, that because Luna's always there. But it's just hard for me to, like, I feel, set like
Balance.
discipline. Yeah, discipline, because it's all about, you don't want to hurt her, or you don't want, like, you're so conscious about it all the time that, yeah, sometimes I'm like, well, I'm ending up not disciplining her.
Right. And I can imagine you were parented differently, right?
Yes.
Right. So there's a lot of kind of thoughts that come up and feelings that come up, and that those, like, little, I always call them outside voices that kind of they're actually limiting beliefs that we kind of we develop them from childhood on. And so first of all, everything you said and our feeling is completely normal and natural to question, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? That's definitely common. I think first and foremost, what I really unpack in my program with my clients is, like, what are your goals? What are your goals with your family? What are your goals with yourself? And creating, like I mentioned earlier, what those values are.
Yeah.
Within those values is where you build the boundaries. Now, a boundary I like to describe as like a rose, right? So a rose has thorns. The boundaries are like the thorns. They're not trying to hurt anybody. Like, we're not trying to hurt our kids, but they're there to protect our children. And boundaries are not they're not permanent. They evolve. So there are boundaries that are negotiable, and there are boundaries that are non-negotiable. And those are really the things that I work with parents to really just looking deeper at what matters for you and your family. How do you build the boundary around that value so that there's this understanding that there's a purpose behind it, and how do I help my child understand that purpose? you know.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, and just really, you know, trying something new and different than how
Yeah.
you were raised, but then just questioning yourself, is this enough? Is this
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
so
you.
there's also, you know, natural consequences and logical consequences. So for example, if your value is safety, like, and you know, we value safe, I feel like that's every parent's value, but
Yeah.
safety is important to us. So, you know, your 3-year-old, let's say, needs to wear a helmet. You would explain to her, I need you to wear a helmet when you're on your tricycle or your bike. And because we're going to protect our head if we fall off. And then, you know, naturally, if she doesn't wear a helmet, she's going to get hurt, right? But we're not
Yeah.
going to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Logically, she, you know, let's say she gets on her bike, she doesn't put her helmet on. Well, Luna, that was her name, Luna, right?
Yeah.
Luna, come over here. I'm gonna hold your bike till you get your helmet on, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the logical consequence. You're not gonna have access to your bike until you get your helmet on. But we're not saying it in a punishing,
Yeah.
yelling, like,
Yeah.
you know, way to make her feel bad. It's more of
Yeah.
like, this is why we have
Yeah.
this boundary.
So yeah, so now that you put it that way, I'm like, okay, I do this all the time. Like, because I'm so like, I don't want to threaten. That's the thing. I'm very big on like, I'm not gonna, after everything I'm reading, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna threaten. So I'm very like careful to the point where it's like, okay, well, maybe now she thinks she can just do whatever she wants, you know, but that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Awesome. Of course.
And that's something we'll also talk about when we do Montessori in the home, with setting up the home, having those a lot of natural consequences. Because I think the point Michelle's trying to also bring by is peaceful parenting doesn't mean that there's not consequences or there's not discipline. It's just a different approach to it, where we're getting out of that yelling and those type of things. But in Montessori, we always say, like, you know, we have freedom within limits. Like, yes, you may be free to do something, but there are still things that are non-negotiable. There are still safety concerns. There are still things that are not. It's just how they're approached and the natural consequence that goes along with it.
And
Yeah.
really just honoring the child, right? Honoring them for where they are at that moment, developmentally, emotionally, physically, and helping them kind of understand, you know, the choices that they're making.
Thank you.
Of course. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Sure.
So, okay, and I can totally resonate with what Luna's mom just said. It's the same exact thing, giving my older one more attention. The younger one, I feel like, just kind of sits out, and then trying to draw the boundary as well. And I feel like I have a hard time with that because it's like the grandparents kind of look in and say like, oh, you know, in a way, like, you're not punishing your child, you know, and you're just kind of like, oh. And the thing is, like, kind of gets in your head because over and over it happens, and it's like, I don't really know how to handle it. So for example, like, okay, I mean, I think you answered my question from the earlier, but like, my actual question is, so if, you know, my son Ayan is having some feelings, right? And you say, you know, let him work it out. How do you exactly do that? Like, do you sit with them? Like, because I feel like, so I tell him like, okay, you want to go take a moment in your room and sit down quietly, and he's usually like, no, you know, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm approaching it wrong. Like, how do you allow them to have those feelings while they're crying it out? He's 4.
4. Okay. So, children really can self-regulate. So, okay, the human brain is not fully developed until 25, 26. And I'm not saying that you have to, you know, regulate him up until that age. But even my 17-year-old still borrows from my calm. It's called co-regulation. And it looks different than probably your 4-year-old, but essentially, children will borrow from your calm. So the first step is anchoring yourself, regulating yourself. So if what he's doing is kind of, you feel your temperature rising or you're getting a little overwhelmed, that's where you get in that presence and you regulate yourself first, and you're going to anchor yourself, and then you can lean in and he will actually borrow from your calm. So what that could look like is you just being available and present for him. If he's having a hard time, maybe you're sitting down with him, maybe you're offering a hug or for him to sit on your lap. Children don't want to be sent away. They don't want that removal of affection because they're in that primal state of their brain where their lid is flipped. So they're not able to access the logical part of their brain because they're in that fight or flight or that freeze when they're having those big moments. And so in order to kind of bring that part back where they can access the logic, they really need you. They need to co-regulate with you. So, every kid's different. It could be a rub in the back. It could be, whatever their love language is, if it's affection, or it could be play. It could be, getting them to get to the next task in a silly way. Jump on my back. We're going to fly like a plane to the bathtub if he's not wanting to transition. So I bring up that self and co-regulation because the children have a developing brain still, they are still going to rely on you for that co-regulation.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Of course. Anyone else have a question, concern? Well, if something comes up, feel free to reach out. I put my my website in the chat, and I love to get to know you and your family, and just know that I'm here if needed. And I want to thank you all for your time. You could be doing anything else on a Wednesday night, and you're here, and just shows how invested you are in your family. And I want to thank Stephanie and Patricia for also hosting this. And I look forward to seeing you guys one day, maybe in person or virtually again. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Yes, have a good one.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.